So we should say that this is a student game. It was made by a student who sought out a Kinect expert, so someone who works with the particular interface of Kinect Xbox, which is a Microsoft sister company, if I'm not mistaken. And that's all I should say. Then maybe Janna can give us some information about some background on games and the kind of politics that.
Hello. First of all, I would like to say I'm not a perfect woman. What I would like to look into is more of my background is more into the narrative side of video games. This is what I teach at the Technological University in Limassol. So we look into video games as storytelling and how to write scripts. So today what I wanted to see was, I broke it down into the narrative theory of video games, and then I wanted to do a very small comparison of this video game with Lara Croft, which is, if you know, Lara Croft is played by Angelina Jolie, and is very popular because she's really this gorgeous woman. So the idea of this perfect woman is passed on also on the video games. But I wanted to say that in terms of narratives, because we have, games are very important. They are more profitable nowadays than the movies. So they spend a lot of big budgets, production companies, and they move into video games because it has a very big audience. The narratives of the video games play a very big role in shaping individual and cultural identities. And this is what I wanted to talk a little bit today, is about identities and narratives. As Yuval Davis says in one of her books, that we're shaping our narratives based on our identities and vice versa. So, and stories people tell and stories people do not tell are narratives. So it plays a very important role. And what happens is that narrative pulls the imagined into the real world, because narrative is the proverbial ferry between the abstract and the concrete, between cognition and behavior, and between symbolic and material. So what happens here is that we have a problem, we have a gap. And video games historically has a problem. There is a spotty record on gender and how we depict gender. And there is a lack of depth in the female characters. Even in here, we have a lack of how deep we go into the female characters. And video games, unfortunately, do that. It has, for very long, been the norm. However, lately we have a lot of female protagonists, because women started playing video games. And the video games have been introduced even for middle-aged people, for older people with Alzheimer's, and it started to shift a little bit of what a video game is within a society. But women have been a part of the gameplay development and participation as early as 1980s. So we have the beginning of female characters in video games as early of 1980s. So even then, and even now, video games are very male-centric. And the gaming community has been characterized as unwelcoming space for women and other marginalized groups. So we could argue that male and female characters are typically portrayed in stereotypical ways, with female characters depicted as sexualized, scantily clad, and visions of beauty. So female characters often display eroticized aggression, glamorizing both sex and aggression. And we have a lot of different female figures in video games, basically to please the men. So we have the ideal body types, we have larger heads, but smaller chests, the waists are beautiful, the hips, and they are like not really realistic with what a real woman or the non-perfect woman looks like. So here we have what I would call a problematic game depiction, which has also here has shown to reinforce gender assumptions of what a woman should look like. So we have what I would call a hostile and a benevolent sexism. What I call hostile sexism suggests that women seek to control men through sexuality. So we see that in the movies, but also in video games. So we use our sexuality to control men, while benevolent sexism considers women as pure, weak, and in need of protection and support. So we come to the Lara Croft and female protagonist. So what I find interesting in regards to the Perfect Woman game is that there is a tendency in recent years games to have more female protagonists appearing in game narratives. So we have the very good example of Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider, which it brought up a lot of discussions about gender in gaming. So what happens here, if we focus on Lara Croft's appearance, it's clearly a side of male desire, may also neglect more nuisance assessments of the character. So here we don't really have something that a male would desire as in terms of what the perfect woman should look like. So that is, depictions of Lara Croft may be demeaning, unrealistic, a side of horrific sexual deviance, a side of playful experimentation, bionic, sadistic, and troublesome. So, you know, this is in big contrast of where we're standing in terms of Lara Croft and the perfect woman here. So given the troubled history of Croft in games, many were intrigued when it was announced finally that the scriptwriter for the rebooted 2013 Tomb Raider would be a woman, and it's Rihanna Pratchett, who is a female scriptwriter for video games. So addressing depictions of women in games involves a close examination of female characters and how players might become their characters in a game. So a lot of men are actually playing Lara Croft, and we have less women playing Lara Croft. So this is very interesting because they serve a different goals. So it's interesting to see men wanting to play a woman, and it comes also an issue of transgender in here. So men want to play a female that has male advances. So her body is very feminine, but at the same time she's very strong, powerful. She can win over obstacles, and she can become very dominant as a character. So this becomes very intriguing for a male player. So in my view, newer, stronger female characters deviate from the industry norm of dominant male protagonists, and by studying how women are depicted in these video games, including the sexualization of female characters, can shed a light on cultural conception of gender roles. So the Perfect Woman video game, along with Lara Croft, in my view, revolves a lot about the body, and we have seen Katrine here playing. So we can also be discussing a sort of performance form from the player, either a man or a woman. And I would like to close this comparison with a question: does body video game performance claims in any way that these women are superheroes? So they are the perfect women, or is it a way for the gamer to confront with their ideal womanhood and the burden of this idealization? So food for thought.
Is there also a video game perfect man?
It would be interesting to see that.
Why not?
But you see, we live in a world where the norm is there is the perfect man. And,
Is it really?
well, you know, I mean,
I see the contrary.
you think
The role
so?
of men is very much questioned.
At the moment, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very difficult for men, I think, what could be a perfect man. It's very unclear. I think so.
For this gen, yes.
It's also a game about a perfect man.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if she can. Well, yes.
I was going to say that I don't think this game would be largely different if there was a man in the story.
Exactly.
So I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I can really not imagine this game a lot different with a man in the story. Because a man can also be a white man. Why not? Or a tribal patriarch. No books, but...
Yeah, I think what the point was that the designer wasn't really focusing on just women playing this game. So
even though it's a woman game, and I think women would be more prone to play than men in a way. I mean, in a stereotypic sense, but I'm pretty sure a lot of men.
It's interesting because when we came to play this game 2 weeks ago, we played it with Maria together. And then there was Frixos, who played another guy who is doing a presentation here. And he played it, and I lived until 16 years old, and he lived up to 18. 85, sorry, 85 years old. So that it's interesting to see this comparison of, again, you know, having to do these bodily movements, and how, again, it plays a role of how you move and how you act. As a woman or as a man, whether it's you win more points or not.
Would it be attractive for a man? I mean, perfect. This word "perfect" attracts a lot of young women. You know, you have this perfect makeup, perfect. Would this perfect man thing attract a man? I don't think a young man is attracted to the word perfect as much as a young woman is.
I think a man is not thinking about or wishing to be perfect so strongly like maybe women are doing.
Yeah.
So in this way it makes a difference, of course.
Well, this is why in Tomb Raider, and this is why I put it as an example, because we're used to, a lot of video games nowadays are shifting. I mean, a successful movie will be turned into a video game because it has been a very successful blockbuster. So the companies see it as an opportunity to make more money. And it has proven that video games are far more successful than the movies. So Tomb Raider has been existing for decades now. And of course we have seen Angelina Jolie, who is this perfect woman. And there has been a shift in, and basically Tomb Raider is being played mostly by men, and it's about a female character. So it's very interesting to see that men want to play female characters, but they're not looking only because she's sexy and exoticized, but they're also looking at the fact that she's strong, she's capable, she's dominant, and this is what I would like to play. So it brings a lot of questions on the surface about transgendering, and you know, video games give you the opportunity to be something rather than yourself. So that's really fascinating for the players.
I'm wondering now if they like really identify with Tomb Raider. Like that's what I'm thinking. If like the guys who play it are really identifying with the character, like if they really fear what like she fears, or if it would maybe be different if it would be a man. Because when it, for example, comes to movies, I always have the feeling, I mean, that men can't do that well, that they identify with women, like this cross-identification, because they never really learn it, because they never have to. And that's why I'm wondering if they like really identify with Tomb Raider, or if it's like more like a person they see and control.
It's very interesting because one of them, what you're saying, because one of the key elements in narratives in video games that you construct as a writer for video games is the journey of the hero. So the hero needs to have a journey. So I need, as a player, to feel connected with whom I'm playing. So either it's a woman or a man, and because Tomb Raider is specifically a woman, you cannot choose another woman or you cannot choose a man to play. identify immediately with the journey of the character. So you have to, the way that video games are designed nowadays is to have a very clear narrative arc and to have a very powerful construction of a character. Because, yes,
in this game I was missing that very
exactly
much.
Yes.
I was here last week when we have seen Orwell. There was a story and there was this narrative element, and I could really choose and could say yes, I will take this decision or the other
That's a
decision.
very good point.
And that was challenging. And it was interesting and frightening.
Yes.
But here I could see nothing frightening
Yes.
for me. I was getting bored, to be
Yes.
honest.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Yeah.
that's it. Where is the narrative? I shall just show my gymnastic self
Yes.
to move to the left and the right more fast or less fast, so I will do some trading and after all I will be perfect. And so the narrative, where was the narrative? Where was the way to understand anything about the way? Except of the choice that I said, I would like to be a tribal woman and not a one that is grandma and watching her grandchild.
I would argue that this might have to do with the fact that this was a student project. A student project. Because I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, are there any single mothers in the game? And we can ask questions about, because Catherine has played it more, so we can ask. My question was also, has there been any mention of abortion? Has there been any mention of cruel evictions? I mean, I was thinking about these issues in regard to my own life. People getting pushed out of their homes, people being in difficult situations in different ways. So it seems that the choices that we're faced with are kind of light-hearted, limited, quirky, simplified.
Superficial in a sense.
Yeah.
There were some choices, but then there was no story. So if I did the choice to say this woman, I would like to do this woman, and then there are just then to get no more information. As okay, this is the choice, or I can do the moving or not, but that's it. So I was missing.
There are all sorts of games. Some games get you into the action, some games not so much. But I wanted to say that it's very difficult to identify yourself totally with the character based on the gender.
Yes.
Because they make the characters so superficial, so a lot of people can identify themselves with them.
Or not.
So, and that's a lot of people can identify like in a superficial level. Because there are millions of people playing these games, they cannot make them so special and deep. Some people will not like them, they will not play the game, and they want all of them to play the game. So there is a superficiality in the root. And also, as women playing video games, okay, I haven't played a lot, but I played some. I was never really concerned if my character was male or female. Sometimes it was male, sometimes it was female. It was just my character. I was doing the things that he was supposed to do. And okay, maybe some games have some special, you need to have some special abilities that are based on gender, but not really, not something that I can think of right now. But it would be fun if Lara Croft had period. Change the parts.
That would be very interesting. To become more of a woman. And have female issues.
They have a female character.
Yes, have female issues and a man playing that. That would be very interesting.
PMS before period.
That would be very
That would
interesting.
make realize that their character is a woman.
But maybe they wouldn't play it again, so they don't sell it.
Because the thing with Lara Croft, the men identify with her, not with her looks, of course it plays a role, but they identify with her skills mainly.
And it would be the same if it was a man. I mean, they would still play. It's better in an aesthetic way for most people to have a woman doing this beautiful schooler. But yeah.
Because if Lara Croft was not played by Angelina Jolie and was played by another woman that was not so sexy and exoticized and was not married to Brad Pitt, maybe there was not so much interest in. Yeah.
Definitely.
So there is an audience that wants to.
You keep referring back to Angelina Jolie, which refers to the movie, which came way after the games were hugely famous.
True.
So I don't see the link between Angelina.
But again, I'm talking about the latest in the last 10 years or so. There was the latest in 2013,
There were,
Tomb Raider.
no, there were ones last year.
Yeah, and there was one, since 2013 it's been written by a
The
woman.
link, I failed to identify the link between Angelina and the character because
you were a fan before she took on. I was also a fan before Angelina. Is that what
No, I truly failed to see the link between the game and the movie.
I just made a
Because
comparison
they
now
just
about
sort of,
Angelina.
use the same branding, but essentially fans of the game are not really fans of the movie.
Yes, but there is a lot of fans of the movie that play the game. Maybe not before, but afterwards, after Angelina Jolie played. I mean,
is the character not similar in both cases?
Yes.
No, it's not. Yes, well,
When Angelina played the character in the movie,
Yeah.
the game character
already existed.
was
Yes.
no. It was made up out of, I don't know, 15 polygons. It looked like nothing, essentially.
No,
Yes,
come on. No, let's say, as a fan of Lara Croft, before she became Angelina, I was very satisfied that Angelina took it on, and I was also very happy with the way that the pixels were kind of, became Angelina's boobs and tiny waist and nice hips. It was very satisfying. The ingredients were there, right? The body type was there. The pony. It was a very good portrayal.
It was really a marketing decision.
Of course, and of course also Angelina took on the role because of the powerful and strong and and the momentum that the game was having because of these traits, right? The sensuality and the dynamism and the adventure.
That's what I'm saying. The game had its own momentum before the movie happened. That's
Yes,
why.
but this is something that I want to say is movies become video games and video games become movies. Right? So the Tomb Raider was first a video game and then it became the movie. So obviously there was an influence in there was video games and then the movie. But the movie, when the movie came, it transformed in a sense the later games that appeared. Because there was a market. Of course, there was a market before, but afterwards, with Angelina Jolie, it reinforced the potential of the game.
Angelina Jolie is Tomb Raider.
She is Tomb Raider. So for me, this is for me. So maybe you disagree, but for me, there is a big connection of the development of the games after Angelina.
But another thing that didn't come out, sorry, because we were having this conversation yesterday, and you mentioned Lara and Tomb Raider as a positive example of womanhood.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
But again, the later games were completely different than the first ones.
Yes,
So
that's what I said.
But
Say more, please.
yeah, but the in the realm of the game, yes, and in the realm of the movie, Angelina in the movie dresses up like the first games of the series, whereas the latest games of the series sort of remove the hypersexualized attire of the character that was in the first game.
Yes, but that's what I said. I said the men in the latest Tomb Raider choose to play Tomb Raider, Lara Croft, based on their male body skills, not on the female body. They choose to play based on their skills, on the skills of the character, not of how she looks. This is what I said when I was presenting.
So you're
Wasn't
saying
that always the case, though?
No.
I mean, personally, I grew up in the sort of video game generation. So, I mean, video games have always been around me growing up. And having played through all the games, it was never important if she was a woman. The story was way more important. The relics, the artifacts, the tombs, the puzzles, those were...
But it was never for you important the skills she had?
the skills as what? As a woman? I mean,
no, the skills as a character. Because we're talking about the female character.
Yes, but what are the skills that you're referring to? Shooting, jumping,
Yes,
running?
of course. Don't you want your character to have skills to
Yes,
play?
but they are not specific to a woman, these skills.
Exactly.
Yes.
They are specific to a man.
Yes, that's what I said. Yeah.
Men like this, they like to watch a woman, a beautiful woman.
To be dominant, to be brave, to be skillful.
We like,
No,
not
it's
just
not what I
men
want.
actually, because I've been, it's just, yeah, okay. The game, but people playing the game especially enjoy that there's a woman doing these things, yeah.
They like to watch a beautiful woman body while playing their boys' game.
Yes.
Men are boys, okay? They like play, but they prefer to watch a woman playing instead of a boy.
Yes.
That's why they, in my opinion, that's why they use a woman body. That's the only reason.
Yeah,
It's much better for a man to watch a woman than a boy.
I would
And
say,
the woman has the man skills.
Because I agree with you, because it's all part of marketing. Because the highest who play video games are mainly men.
Exactly.
But if we want to change and have Lara Croft being played by women as well, maybe we could introduce an idea. I don't know, for the writer of the next Lara Croft to be introducing issues of women.
you could find,
Exactly.
you could find like eco menstruation pads along with the health.
She gets pregnant accidentally and wants to have an abortion.
But-
Or she chooses to have the baby.
But,
you know,
but
as a single mom.
being on one's period, being on one's period, it should not be a disadvantage in terms of the acrobatics because athletes do perform.
Yeah, maybe she would lose
sometimes,
like 5% of your power or something.
but gain other powers like
Yeah.
intuition.
Like more angry, then she can their asses, stuff like that. I don't know, okay, I know I'm being stereotypical. Sorry.
But
We
video
are allowed
games
to
are
be
stereotypical, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to say actually.
Yes,
I mean, you've
please.
already touched all of the questions I more or less had playing this. But one thing that did strike me too is, comparatively speaking, with Papers, Please, which will be talked about next week, I think, at this time, just to draw a comparison here, you have a different situation where you would probably, as far as I played it, care less or more, depending on your position, on how gendered you feel by the game. This starts with a title that already makes you want to think about gender, even if the game is really not always about gender. That's for all of us to decide. But Papers, Please, for example, depicts the dictatorial regime that is fictitious as far as I know, and puts the player in a position to have a moral dilemma. And the dilemma is, as the police border person, so the player is a person working on a border to begin with, has to make a decision. And the decision that they make, game or not, has a lot to do with the politics that we all have. So one of my questions here, in terms of Perfect Woman, is how political is this game? Or what kind of political message does it send? Or does it not? Papers, Please actually puts you in the position, if you decide to stamp the passport for anyone to go through the border, there's a consequence and you face sanctions. So if you act in your own humane belief or a sense of social justice, you'll be punished for that. But if you do what you're supposed to do in this dictatorial regime, and you follow the laws of the state, then you'll be rewarded to the fullest. So game or not, gender or not, you can actually easily kind of intervene that obstacle to begin with. Something that I couldn't do here because I didn't feel represented even in a simplified version here, so I didn't see many women writers, women freelancers, queer women beyond the binary, single mothers who choose to be single mothers. So there are a lot of choices that aren't included. And even if it's a simple representation, exclusion tells us something about a choice. that someone makes. Although Lea did say that this wasn't particularly directed explicitly to women and that men can benefit from it too. She also said that in an interview that the game is partly about the image of women in media and computer games, because she does still think that they're represented both as characters but also as developers in games. So I think, to give a bit of credit there was an attempt to work on something as a woman developer in the game. So other questions that I had issues with, how motivating or useful, even constructive, is the idea of a perfect woman, man, or human being. I think we're very far from perfection in a lot of places. And is that a provocation to actually overthrow the very idea itself, or is that a stimulating idea for us to want to improve ourselves as human species? It's an aspiration, in other words, to become something that might even be socially constructed. So at least let's think about perfection as a social construction, if not gender. I was also thinking about how much of an educational tool, and I'm assuming games are. So what might be something we take from here if we're gendering the game, or thinking about gender and the roles prescribed, something we were talking about here. Did we mention the bad interface that was deliberate? Lea I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Schönfelder, is that right in German? So she said that one of the aims of the game, besides commenting on how society has created the idea of a perfect woman through questionnaires, very simple questions that seem to be identified as a type of woman, is to make a game controlled by a Kinect that encourages players to cheat the system. And I don't really know much more about this. I won't go so deep in terms of the device itself not being responsive and that there's a bad output. So that would already be an encouragement to make you do something else with this game, rather than trying to score highly. and she talks about using chairs and mannequins and friends, so other support groups, human and object, in terms of trying to cheat systems of the game. I think these were my questions that, in respect of the game, as much as I know about gaming, because I'm definitely not an expert.
Yeah. I think what we want to do, what we designed, right, what we were talking about amongst ourselves, was that we wanted to find a way, well actually we could see a way to connect the theme of this with contemporary feminist politics in terms of, in the terms in which they encourage and think about more meaningful participation, right? So the circle here, the fact that we don't have a huge attendance, the fact that we can sit like this and have a more intimate and connected conversation about things that are important to us, and it's something that we would like to think about more, especially because this is something that the creators talk about, right? So it's another layer that you brought up that I'd like to emphasize. Let me read this about the second layer of the game, right? So when Lea went to the and she found and she decided to work with I don't know his name, Peter. They decided that this game should help them accomplish 3 things, right? So, number 1, make a game commenting on how society has created the perfect woman and perpetuate these ideas through media. And the specific inspiration for them was the questionnaires in magazines. So hence the whole format and what Yana talked about as the game mechanics. So they based the whole game mechanics on women's magazine questionnaires. And the notion that the ideal life at one age is contradicted when you reach another age. So this is where the notion of decision and the limitations that you later face due to your decisions, that's where it comes from. And the second point is that they want to make a game controlled by the Kinect specifically because the Kinect encourages players to cheat. The Kinect is a bad device, I'm quoting, right? It is unresponsive and its output data is unreliable. We wanted to embrace these qualities of the device / life / society. And we wanted, the bad interface is simply another fun challenge in the game. There are so many impossible, I mean, you couldn't see it because Catherine has really, you know, I died at 16 as a teenager. Everyone wanted to have sex with, right? This is as far as I got, and it took me 3 minutes to lose, but we saw something amazing, really an amazing performance. So there are so many called impossible levels, but with the aid of chairs, fans, and mannequins, anything is possible. And I love this. I think it's a comment about community. So cheating the system is about community. I think women power.
Or building power.
Or building power. I like the building power because women build communities. And not only, people's power. And then, right, so the third point for them is that they want to use the previous point about cheating to reinforce the ideas of point 1, which is about the impossibility of perfection and this kind of flattening of womanhood through these questionnaires and the problems and the misrepresentation in the media. So I think this is a wonderful added layer that we didn't see, that isn't obvious. And this is just to bring this conversation back to the feminist politics of participation, the contemporary feminist politics of participation, and this beautiful coincidence with our circle at this moment. Please talk more. Please can you say more? Can you talk more? Also you. If you want to talk about more about this.
Well, I don't want to make any assumptions, but feminism is not a very blind word aside from practice to make huge sweeping state. So that might have something to do with the components. But I'm in a group, an artist research group, Picnic, and we do kind of sometimes quirky things like public interventions, or we look to create audience and find audience where you wouldn't ordinarily expect one. In the sense that when you work as an artist, typically you exhibit somewhere, you do an intervention, and there's a pre-announced date and time which you can be followed. So this was something we did in 2014 at part of Treasure Island, which was an exhibition at the Municipality Art Center. And my intervention actually happened through a series of walking episodes. After we collected about 6 videos from international artists. And we had a mobile projector. We walked around with scouting from the right location, but also finding an audience that we didn't know would be there. So the kind of anticipation of not knowing how to create an audience and who your audience is each time, spontaneity, but also interesting conversations with people who wouldn't typically go to see a show, for example. So I think of this as an opportunity like that too. You never know who your audience is going to be, and also who's going to show up.
There is no, I think we're kind of moving towards a moment where there is no audience. There is just us. There is
one type of audience.
Yeah. But it's more important to kind of, I think, blur the lines of what is the backstage and what is the performance, what is life, what is art. This does have to do with community, also ritual. And I don't know if we've already kind of tried to, well, maybe we didn't invite you to play the game. Would you guys like to play the game? Would you like, no, there's no here, it's a very clear no.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you very much, but I am the role of the mother, and I have now take my daughter, who is waiting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have to apologize as well for the same role, which is not perfect.
That was a nice reply. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think for sure what we have here is a beautiful opportunity for discussion.
Well, because never play.
What's that?
Perhaps I am too old.
I would like to rewrite. I would like to add
No,
to the program.
I don't, except from the movement, I see nothing else. All these thoughts, all these...
Oh, you mean the game itself?
It has no depth for me either.
Yeah,
It doesn't have any depth.
It's pretty
I think maybe
first
you,
level.
It's very shallow.
yeah, it's not
It's
like
good that you're making these observations. I think it's because it's an exhibition and there's always
We need
different
depth.
things that we see in
We
exhibitions.
need that. Desperately.
You know, otherwise what will you change in society
Yes.
or in the role of women if you don't go,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
deeper and
Yes.
question the roles
Yes.
and here I didn't miss
Yes.
anything.
Sure.
It remained, you know, it's flat.
A child of
Very flat.
It's
five
monodimensional.
can play.
I mean,
Yes.
yes, it's nice, the idea, but you know, it's nothing that attracts me at all. So, and it's a pity. I mean, as a student, he thought about creating something, that might guide people to play a little around, but playing around for a women's role today
Yes.
is not enough
Yes.
by far.
It doesn't even touch it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's misleading, the title? Perfect Woman, as a title?
For me it is. For me, you know, to question our role today, compare with the past, with things that are going on, and there is no coherence between the title and the...
Yeah. Yeah.
There is irony, but we need.
That's
we
sarcasm.
need better.
That is
Okay, okay,
But we need better.
I admit,
Not telling
but
us.
it doesn't lead further.
Yeah. Yeah. There's deliberate sarcasm in the title.
Yeah.
I think that's the purpose. That's how I read it, that it's a sarcastic approach where it makes the player literally contort to be able to progress to the next level. And it's just kind of scratching the surface, saying, well, this is how
This is
absurd
really
it is. Think about it.
Make a leap.
It's not enough.
Yes.
And you
Sure,
try
that's a
and
legitimate
this is
response.
what you need, a sort of
Yeah.
nudge of like,
Yeah.
consider this, like, I think it's a very humorous game. Because exactly I mean, this is how I read it. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's a humorous subject,
Yeah.
No.
but the
Yeah.
approach, that's my interpretation.
You know, when I remember the 70s, when we talked about the changing of women's roles, and I was teaching this subject, and then, maybe I want it more serious.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, absolutely. And
My
it's a very
need
good
is
point, sure.
to have it more serious.
Actually, now that you just said that, I find it very interesting because at the next place that we have an invited speaker who works actually on finding solutions for serious issues through play, through games.
And
So I think this is a nice.
Yeah.
yes,
right.
you know,
Okay.
I wanted to
Stage.
say something about this. Taking the piece. Yes, taking the piece. You know something, I agree with what you're saying because obviously we need to go more into depth about female issues. But I think because she's doing it deliberately, but I wanted to give an example of this. There is a Turkish artist, and she lives now in Germany. Her name, I need to pronounce it right. It's Neslihan Arol, and she's a clown. She's a
I
female
heard
clown.
about her.
And she did a show in Berlin,
Uh-huh,
and she called it ideal kadin, which means the ideal woman.
Yeah.
So what she did, she dressed up as a clown. So she puts what she, Jacques Lecoq calls it, she puts a clown nose on, and it's, he says it is the smallest mask in the world. So what she does, she dresses up as a clown, but she's very feminine. On one leg she's wearing a sock, on the other one she's wearing high heel. And what she does is that this clown is called Super. So she pretends to be a superhero. So she goes on stage and she performs, and she has this hat, and she has different pieces of paper, and she picks one, and she transforms herself into the ideal bitch, the ideal mother, the ideal feminist, the ideal prostitute. So she does all these things, and of course, what she says, you cannot take me seriously. And I think compared to this is what they're trying to do. She smiles and laughter about, she takes a piece of all the stereotypical perceptions we have of images, and she critiques the idealization of being a woman. So I think this is what they're also doing. I mean, you see the characters, one eye, things like that. So, which brings me to the conclusion that it opens up discussion. So by opening discussion in every aspect of video game or life or clown, she's like saying, like sometimes we feel as women as clowns, trying to please and be all these things.
Stereotypes.
So I think it brings up, this wonderful space of discussion and arguing and disagreeing and agreeing. And
maybe also this type of entertainment and reflection is a little far away from me, let's say.
It's maybe like also kind of art, because when you see like a picture, sometimes you just like, okay, what is it about? But like for the artist, it says so much, and like, or for like everyone, it says something else. And I think it's the same with computer games. Like, I was also very disappointed because I read about the game, then I played it, and I was like, the movements doesn't have to do anything with the real life. But
exactly.
there's no connection. But I think maybe that's also what she wanted to show, that maybe like in media, it's just like fake, and they're just puppets, and it's not real at all. And also, when you play it more often, you see that the changes you make change your future, or the future goals, how it will be. Like, for example, for me, it was really hard to be a student at one point, because before, I don't know what, I was a street kid, so it was like really difficult for me to be a good student. But if I had chosen something else at the beginning, it would have been easy to be a good student. So I also wanted to show how it affects life, like maybe where you were born in, how you were raised.
Okay, this is quite, yes, this is a good idea, really, because there are, lines that develop and you can't get out of. What your choice is somehow your destiny. This was quite intelligent, yes.
Yes, and I just discovered it after like a few games, like playing it, a few times playing it, and I think when you read about what she wanted to say, then you're like, okay, now I get it and stuff. So I mean, you see that it's like maybe made during university, because you always think a lot about the things then you create. Like a normal computer game, when they create it, I don't know what the developers think, but I think most of the time they think about money, and there's not that much behind it. But it's a difference here. They probably didn't have any money, but had a lot of thoughts behind it.
Maybe it's. I must admit, this world is a strange world, a foreign world to me, and yes, I see that I'm a little opposing it. It's not mine.
Not everything is what you want.
But still, I mean, like, I saw bits and pieces there. Cool. Nice idea.
Shall
covered myself.
I want to push it a little more and to say, just because I was reading this article a few days ago, that there's this, we know this American, just to see where gender is and where we are in relation to it, depending on where we go in different places. But so there's this big American multinational toy company called Mattel, and now they're coming up because they've been criticized a lot of times for not including in dolls different body types, so we're not really the size, but also types. So women who wear hijabs might want the kids to be able to relate to that headscarf. And so it started off as a criticism, and now they've reached the point where they've decided that those should be gender neutral. In other words, a kid decides what kind of expression they want to give to them to the doll. And so the question, I mean, this is a positive act, the question comes one of how indicative is this kind of change in a product that's consumable of social change? Does it actually reflect where we are, or is this another moment of a kind of logic, something that presents it right? So I'm just throwing that out as information in terms of where we are, at least in the world of an American multinational toy shop.
Exactly, because I'm afraid that money will influence choices and decisions, and not to our best, not to our
necessarily.
advantage.
That's not an indication that it's coming out of the limit, but it could be.
Which again takes us to the power of play, and play can be the solution to a lot of things. The right kind of play, where we really put our heads together.
And not really restricted or defined or gender at such a in the northern countries at least it's big practice in education to introducing gender neutral pronouns, so practicing change doesn't just happen in consumption. When you think you might be represented, it has to be the other way around actually. If it's going to enjoy world of consumption, it has to start from social change. I was thinking about this as I was playing this, because I thought, okay, this is not where Germany is in 2019. So it's not representative, I'm sure it's not. And there are a lot of issues that need to be tackled, and a lot of them came out here in a great way, so 15 of them.
I think, it's nice that we were here, a few people, otherwise we would listen to you.
That's right, not do it too much.
It's actually that you have a world where men play video games, and when they hear about women presenting them, they don't have I don't know, I have this feeling. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's fun. And I think this game is a lot of fun. Okay, you cannot play it forever, but a couple of times I would like to play it.
Yeah.
It's my own. I'll help you with my last.
I think this game is more fun if you play it once as well. It's not kind of good.
I had one wife.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, sound. We need the sound,
bad choice. You see, when you start with the easy things, you don't go far. And that's a statement.
We know that.
Yeah, I didn't think about
From
it.
experience.
I just thought
From
it would
life
be better to
itself.
start with something easy, and now I cannot go to school.
Maybe theories should be something we explore together right now. Before we go.
Yeah, there are something.
So you were child worker.
I will take care of my brother during work.
Really is impressive.
Made a moment.
What about fiction? This is fun, but I'm dying. Warning.
How old?
27.
Okay.
I think.
Oh boy.
Like a louse. Didn't take yourself.
I don't think it's over. There's no threat next time.
I have one more chance in my life. But I cannot be a king. Just because I was raised in this place does not mean that I can.
Can't go to MIT if you're raised in the States.
Watch me.
Wow, it's so fast.
Okay, I can't. Thanks. I give up. Well, at least I tried.
Yeah, that's right.